Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Stratford District Council Planning Committee on the 19th of June. I'm Councillor Neil Eden. I'll be chairing this evening. I'll start with some housekeeping. There are no fire alarms planned this evening, so if one does go off, please follow us all out to the muster point, which is behind the back of the Windmill pub. Could I ask that all phones are switched to off or to silent at very least, so they don't disturb the flow of the meeting? And just to remind everybody that this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting, and only those registered to speak will be able to do so. Okay, so a quick introduction of the top table. To my far right is Howard Allison from Committee Services. To my next right is Amy Shipley, our solicitor. Then to my left, David Jeffrey, our committee manager this evening, and then in no particular order, Malfina Ejak, Sian Mayer and Alison Willers, who will be our planners this evening. Okay, so into the... Oh, sorry, David, I believe you have a statement to make.
I do, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, my name is David Jeffrey. I'm the planning manager for tonight's meeting. My role is to provide impartial advice to clarify any planning issues that arise and to assist members' decision-taking, and planning committee members are not bound by advice from officers or by their recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, so into the agenda proper then. Any apologies for absence?
Yes, good evening, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Adam.
Thank you. Okay, has anyone got any disclosures of interest this evening? Councillor Scorer.
Thank you. I'd just like to disclose I'm a parish councillor at Kyneton, and when the application for the Old Mill House and also the land off Tyso Road was discussed at parish, I withdrew myself and I come to the meeting with an open mind.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chairman. I made personal visits, site visits to the properties involved in items 6, 7 and 8.
Thank you. Councillor Parry.
Good evening, Chair, and thank you. I'd just like to highlight the fact it's the same declaration I made at the last planning committee, but when the first application 24/00408/FUL, when the first planning application came forward, I worked for the estate agency that actually sold the plot, but this is a new application and I have had no involvement whatsoever from a professional capacity.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parry. Anyone else? No? Okay. So, minutes then. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of May 2024, can I have an agreement to sign those, please? Thank you all. Okie dokie. Right. On to the planning application. So I'm going to rearrange the order slightly here. So item number 5, which is 24/00433 FUL, that has been delegated to officers and issued, I believe. So that is now dealt with. Then on to item number 7, which is application 24/00091/Fairy. There are no registered speakers on that this evening, so can I get agreement that we delegate that to officers? Thank you. And then item number 8, application 23/03249 FUL. Again, no registered speakers, so can I again get agreement to delegate to officers? Thank you very much. Okay then, so that brings us on to our first application for the evening, application 24/00408 FUL, Old Mill House, Mill Lane, Kyneton. Malvina, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. So firstly, before we start with the presentation, I would like to draw the members' attention to the updates sheet, why we brought this application back to committee. And there was also the planning agent submitted further plans that will be presented tonight as well. Thank you. The application site is located within the built-up area boundary of Kyneton and is denoted by the black dot on this map. The site is a corner plot surrounded by dwellings of varied types and sizes. To the north, there is an area of open green space. And it is also noteworthy that the site is not within the conservation area, which is outlined by the purple line to the south and west. The site has the existing vehicular access from Mill Crescent to the west and pedestrian access of Mill Lane. The existing dwelling is located in the southeast corner of the site, and an overgrown vegetation denotes the existing site boundary with Mill Crescent and Mill Lane. Planning permission is sought to demolish the existing dwelling and erect 4 number of dwellings and associated development, including 2 new vehicular accesses to the north and retention of the existing vehicular access to the west. This slide shows the proposed site plan, including the section of the existing hedge to be retained, a new planting along the application site boundary. And the next slide shows the proposed street scene elevations. This photograph shows the front elevation of the existing dwelling to be demolished. And this photograph is taken from the junction of Mill Crescent and Mill Lane and shows the site looking towards the southeast direction, as indicated by the blue arrow in the corner of the slide. This photograph is taken within Mill Lane and shows the application dwelling and the site looking towards the southwest direction. The hedge denotes the application site and the existing pedestrian link is adjacent to the gate of number 1, Rose Craddock, shown on this photo. Just The application dwelling and garden, including existing vehicular access of Mill Crescent. The site of Twin Cottage to the right-hand side. And this is Mill Crescent looking towards the north direction, Twin Cottage, the application site, and further the open green space can be seen in the distance. So this is the existing access to the west and the application site behind Twin Cottage. Chair, the balanced recommendation is to approve the application for planning permission subject to the conditions as detailed within the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Malvina. Okay, so we'll invite up our first speakers this evening, Councillors David Gosling and Ken Pridis from Kyneton Parish Council. Good evening, gentlemen. Nice to see you again. I think you know the drill. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. Button on the right-hand side whenever you're ready. 3 minutes to talk, and I'll give you a 30-second warning whenever you're ready. So, good to go.
Good evening. As the cursed councillor from Kyneton, who's, based on very valid grounds, required this application to be reconsidered, it's only appropriate that I should speak to it rather than asking the council's chair to do so. So I'm just going to repeat our previous statements. County Highways have no objection, despite the design failing to comply with the Highways Design Guide. If you have any concerns about the safety of travellers on this narrow, twisting road, you do not need to accept the Highways conclusion. They are merely consultees, as are we. The planning officer states that on balance, the development would not be harmful to the character and local distinctiveness of the street scene. We suggest that on balance, the development seen by residents day in, day out is harmful to the character and local distinctiveness of the street scene. Some of you last time described the layout as appearing contrived, squashed, and an overdevelopment. And those opinions were voiced whilst the officer was explaining the development to be of a lower floor area than the previous design. A statement which clearly influenced some of your individual final decisions. But now we know that it is not smaller, it is larger. And it still remains squashed, contrived, and an overdevelopment. But on top of what we said at the previous meeting, I'd like to draw attention to the view expressed by a member of this committee who more or less said that 4 solid, permanent brick and stone, 2-storey dwellings with 9 shiny metal 4-wheeled boxes in front will be visually less harmful than a currently overgrown length of natural vegetation which is not permanent and easily maintained. I'd like you to consider whether that was a valid planning reason on which to base a decision. Now, you can either vote against the officer's recommendation and encourage the applicant to resubmit a more sympathetic scheme with repositioned access, or you can accept the recommendation. If you accept the recommendation, please insist on the removal of permitted development rights, which would otherwise enable a ground floor extension to be built over the already short gardens. We requested this last time, but you did not pick it up. It was included in the previous permission. We encourage you to be brave and not influenced by the suggestion that a refusal would automatically be appealed. Make an
30 seconds.
Thank you. Make an informed decision and invite the applicant, the planning officer, and the parish council to work together to bring forward a community acceptable scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Does anyone have any questions for the Parish Council? Councillor Parry.
Good evening, gentlemen. Nice to see you again. I've just got a couple of queries. In the update sheet, it's been highlighted that the larger floor space is 5.98 square metres. In your view, do you think that increase is going to have a significant impact on the character of the area because it is 5.98 square metres larger than the previous permitted plans?
I think that 4 dwellings is what is at issue here. The reason that the calculation was redone was because you were originally being told that it was going to be 45 square metres less. It's not the marginal increase from the last scheme to this scheme. We're looking at this planning application, as we're so often told that we must do, and not look at anything other than the application in front of us. And that application is for 4 dwellings, and that will impact on the street scene.
And if I could just come back on one thing, just to highlight in the committee report, were you aware that point 22 does highlight PD rights removed?
I have not thoroughly examined this officer's report. In the previous officer's report, the PD rights that were being removed were for any roof lights, I suspect, or glazing. It did not refer to extensions at ground floor level.
We'll get perhaps officers to confirm that. Thank you.
The question has sort of been answered, maybe. Is it a point of clarification around Councillor Parry's question? By all means, then.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Reference the difference in floor space. I do agree with my colleague here that it is marginal at the moment when you look at it. But at the meeting last time, it was 45 square metres, which was actually quoted inaccurately by the case officer. And I think that, at the time, swayed a lot of councillors, because there was discussion about an inappropriate amount of overdevelopment, whether it was squashed, etc., etc. So it's less to do with the marginal difference and more to do with the way this influenced this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions for our councillors? No? Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your contribution. Okay, so the next speaker this evening will be Mr. James May, who's the neighbour. Good evening.
Good evening. Councillors, Chairman, thank you for allowing me to speak on this matter for a third time. I won't rehearse again all the reasons why I consider this particular proposal to be poor, therefore rejected, as I hope you're clear on these by now. I note that at the last meeting, many of the councillors expressed agreement with a great number of objectors, the parish council and ward member, and their concerns with this proposal. Amongst other descriptions, this proposal was described by council at the last meeting as awfully overdeveloped, a dense development, and with gardens on the limit of what was acceptable. It was also noted that plot 4 encroached on the adjacent footpath. However, we were told that the proposal was smaller in built area than the last, and from the views expressed in the meeting, it appeared to me that on that basis, this new proposal was accepted. However, we now know that this is not the case, and the new proposal has a larger footprint. To be clear, the inclusion of additional property makes this already controversial development even more so. The additional property means that the existing hedgerow will be removed. I note that it was mentioned at the last meeting that this site was overgrown, and I think we have to remember that the property has been vacant and neglected for a number of years, meaning that it's lost its lustre, and the hedgerow, yes, could do with some upkeep. Nonetheless, the green, the hedgerows adjacent to it, the old mill combined with the remaining old properties, Twin Cottage and the old mill house itself, give the area its rural character. And we should also remember that this new development will stand 2 metres above its neighbour, Twin Cottage. Removing all this established hedgerow removes the character and will allow these new properties to completely dominate the scene, dominating over Twin Cottage, dominating over the footpath, with little to no greenery to soften the impact. The additional property will also increase vehicle movements on an already small street, and it will likely mean that even more cars will park on the roads. The nearby mill occupies businesses, including a hair salon and dance school, while the road is also used as a rat run to avoid the congested high street at peak times. The additional vehicle movements and more cars on the street will make this situation worse. The squeezing in of this additional property also reduces the amount of garden area each property will have when they're built. Indeed, it has been said that the gardens meet the minimum area requirements of the SPD, but this proposal means that 2 of the gardens, plot 3 and plot 4, will be less than the minimum guidelines of the SPD in terms of length. The minimum guideline is 10.5 metres, whereas
30 seconds.
it'd be 9.8 and 8.2 metres for plot 3, and only 7.4 and 5.8 metres for the larger plot 4. It's been argued that a mix of housing is a better development. While a mix of housing might be better in other situations, I don't think on this constrained site, with an already stretched in the original proposal, can acceptably accommodate the additional proposed property. Thank you all. And can I just quickly add at the end that I echo the comments about the permitted development and their removal. Thank you.
Perfectly on time. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. May? Oh, Councillor Keithley.
Hello, Mr.
Hello.
May. Thank you very much for that. I wanted to ask you a question about the use of your garden, actually.
Yep.
And particularly the patio areas and where
Yep.
the sun is in your garden. Could
Yep.
you tell me a little bit about that?
So our garden goes from sort of east to west, and there's the wall, the boundary wall, which divides us from Old Mill House. That is where the sun lands in the garden. So we have a patio there, and that is where we predominantly sit. So we'll be very, very close proximity to these new properties. It's been highlighted that there is another patio area immediately adjacent to our house. I would say that this is still overlooked. It's still overlooked by property, predominantly by plot 3 and 4 directly, and to some extent plot 2. But that area is next to our drive. We've sat next to cars. It's also shaded, and it's significantly smaller. It's not the area we use to sit in. It's just a means to get from the cars to the back door.
Okay.
And as I say, it's still overlooked.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Then thank you very much for your contribution this evening,
Thank
Mr.
you.
May. Cheers. Okay, calling forward our final speaker on this item, Louise Steele, the agent for the application. Good evening. So you have 6 minutes to speak. I will give you a 30-second warning. And whenever you're ready, you're free to take it away.
Well, thank you again, Chairman and Councillors, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Louise Steele and I'm from Frampton's Town Planning. As the officers have summarised, the principle of residential development on the site has already been accepted by the Council via the previous planning permission on the site. The proposal is very similar to that of previously proposed, the difference being the addition of one new home. The principle of demolition of the existing building has already been agreed. The site is located in the built-up area boundary of Kyneton. Both the adopted local plan and the Kyneton neighbourhood plan support the principle of development in the built-up area boundary. Kyneton is identified as a main rural centre in the adopted local plan and as such being suitable for some development. Kyneton provides a range of day-to-day facilities and therefore is a sustainable location for new development. As the officer states, the development is of a small scale and Kyneton can sustain 4 further homes. This is a classic small-scale infill development. With regards to the floor space figures officers have referred to in the committee report, please note that they were gross external areas. If you look at the gross internal area, the difference is 478 square metres versus 472 square metres, which is a 5.98 difference, and that's a 1.2 increase in GIA. The difference in footprint is 287 square metres versus 284 square metres, which is 3 square metres, which is an increase in 1% of footprint. So footprint is just the base of the building. We're talking about GIA or GI, we're talking about the next floors above. The proposals are no higher than previously proposed. The houses are a relatively modest scale with the smaller 3-bed terrace properties in the centre of the site. The housing mix, which includes 3-bed dwellings, reflect the Council's adopted development requirements SPD, which states on page 239 that there is a significant underprovision of 2- and 3-bedroom market homes. The SPD states the smaller homes generally cost less to buy than the larger homes and therefore are more affordable to young families and people on lower incomes. Ensuring a supply of smaller market homes will enable more people to access home ownership and divert some pressure from limited, much in demand affordable housing. The adopted core strategy, CS19 policy, suggests a 40 to 45% provision of 3-bed houses. There is no specific policy for housing mix in the adopted Kyneton neighbourhood plan, as that policy only refers to sites of 10 units or more. The surrounding houses are mixed in scale and character, with the majority of surrounding houses being 2 stories in height. As set out in detail in the officer's report to committee, the proposals have been carefully designed not to cause overlooking to any neighbouring properties. I think at the moment we were just talking about the position of the hard landscaping in the neighbour's property. I think it's important to say there is quite a large wall in between that property and this site. As set out in the detail in the officer's report to committee, the proposals have been carefully designed not to cause I've just repeated that, sorry. The existing site is very unattractive and overgrown vegetation, and the existing house is in a very poor state.
If you want to just pause for a second while Councillor Passingham sorts his phone out.
Okay, thank you. The planning officers have worked very proactively with my client to provide the highest quality scheme. My client is a local house builder specialising in high quality, small scale residential schemes. The site has been subject to ecological surveys and the County Council's ecology officer has satisfied the proposals. The proposed conditions suggested by officers require the submission of a detailed landscaping scheme and details of ecological mitigation, including nesting for swifts and enhancement strategy for hedgehogs. There are no objections from the local lead flood authority or the Environment Agency. There are no objections from the County Council's highways officer. The County Highways officer is happy with the levels of parking proposed. And the highways officer is happy with the access proposals. Bicycle stores are also proposed, and there are no objections from the heritage officer or county archaeologist. There are no objections from the tree officer or the county ecology officer. In summary, the proposed development is an important step to enable the delivery of new homes. This is all in line with the Council's adopted planning policy. These homes will also contribute to the district's housing land supply. We respectfully request that the committee members endorse the officer's recommendation and approve the application. I know there's been some discussion this evening about permitted development rights, and my client is happy to accept any condition that removes the permitted development rights. The other query that one of the objectors just mentioned is the amenity space for gardens. The gardens are in accordance with the minimum spaces required in terms of area. The smallest garden is 50 square metres for the 3-bed, and that's what the standard is required. It's the minimum standard is 50 square metres. All the other gardens exceed the standards. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and so sorry for the interruption during your speech. Members, do we have any questions? Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Hello and good evening. There was reference made by one of the earlier speakers regarding the hedgerows, the existing hedgerows, and concern about their removal. Can you advise, were they going to be removed in the existing planning permission, or is this something new for this particular planning permission?
Sorry to interrupt. The intention is to retain as much as possible on the two side boundaries, but on the front of the site where the car parking is, they are intended to be removed there, and they were on the previous scheme as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Keithley.
Thanks very much. Good evening. Hi. I've got a question in respect of the gardens.
Yeah.
You've just mentioned that one of the plots has got a minimum 50 square metres.
Mm-hmm.
In the report that I've read, I see that you're proposing to add additional planting on the boundary between these properties and Twin Cottage. Would that be right?
And Twin Cottage, yeah, the gentleman's, yeah, there's a little bit, yes, on that side boundary.
So
yeah.
is that what we're seeing with the schematic on the trees?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
The question I suppose I'm coming round to is, if you've got the absolute minimum of garden space for some of these properties, how's planting trees along the boundary going to impact on the usable garden?
They will be in the garden, so it will impact on them. I don't know the level of it, but I assume trees are often point of enjoyment in that garden anyway.
Do we know what sort of trees they would be?
I don't know. That will be agreed in a landscaping scheme. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks very much for
Okay.
that. Just a second point, if I may.
Of course.
I think I just wanted to say that I was a little bit confused by the description of the increase in gross internal area.
Yeah, sorry, I think I meant to say gross. It's the same figure as the officer's got on that. I think you've referred to I think you've referred to a GEA in your update. Is that right?
No, well,
the GIA, sorry, in your update.
I think maybe we'll pick that up in points of
I think
clarification.
we will pick up.
Yeah.
Pick up that,
I'm still confused by that and the officer's report. Thank you
I
for
think
your answer.
I think the important thing is when you look at the footprint, and that's the overlay there, as you can see. But I think the really important thing, which is the footprint, which is just that 3 square metres increase, the 1% increase in footprint.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? No? Then thank you very much for your contribution this evening. Okay, members. Into points of clarification then. Councillor Keithley, would you like to start as you finish last?
How did you guess I had some points? Thank you, Chair. Well, the first question I have really is this issue of the space. You know, when we were at the last committee meeting, we heard that there was a reduction in the size of the development effectively. In your committee report, Malvina, I read that on page, I'll take you to it because I've looked at it already. Hang on a second. It's the table on page 11, sorry. Well done. Yeah, on page 11. So if I look at this is floor space. So it tells me that plot 1 under the current application is marginally larger than the previous application. Is that right? Yeah. Plot 2 is smaller, obviously, because it's different. It's a 3 bedrooms instead of 4 bedrooms. If I add up 1, 2, 3, and 4, it comes to 565. If I add up the original proposal, it comes to 516. That is nearly a 10% increase in floor space. But what we've heard from the applicant and the parish council is that the change is negligible. So I'm just a bit bemused, and I'd like to really bottom out which number is right. Is that fair?
So the calculation in the table in the report was measured externally.
That would be what we'd call the footprint, would it be?
Yes, essentially.
Okay, so if that's correct, if the table in your report is the footprint...
So that's over 2 floors. That's why the difference is larger.
So this is living accommodation then, not the footprint of the properties?
No.
Ah, okay. So that's the internal floor space. That's not the footprint. That's what's available for people to live in. There's a difference there. Thank you. So that was my first question. So perhaps that helps. The second question relates to a point that was raised by the owner of Twin Cottage, Mr. May, in respect of the garden spaces being below the minimum requirements, which was challenged by the applicant's agent, who said that the garden space was in accordance with the minimum and actually met the minimum standard. So can you clarify for us, is the applicant correct, the applicant's agent correct, or is the neighbour correct?
Normally, the relevant part of the SPD provides the minimum garden area that should be provided to a new dwelling, and these areas are met in this case. However, there are further considerations of the usability of the garden space, and that part talks about the width and length of the garden, and provides guidelines that normally it should be 10.5 meters. A garden should be 10.5 meters long, but in this case, because the area has a pretty much square or rectangle shape, it would be usable. So the guidelines related to the garden's lengths or widths are only to ensure that we do not provide like very narrow but very long gardens that would not be usable, or the other way around. So in this case, the minimum garden area would be achieved, but it happens that some of the gardens would not meet that length requirement.
Okay, thank you for that. So I understand that, which brings me on, I suppose, to the final question I asked the applicant's agent, which was in respect of additional tree planting that would be required to provide some privacy to Twin Cottage or some amenity benefit to Twin Cottage. So tree planting, is there space for tree planting along the boundary with Twin Cottage in a garden that's below the minimum required depth?
The planting would be appropriate for the garden sizes and secured by condition, but
Yeah, I think that sums it up. We would control the details of the soft landscaping by condition. We would be mindful of the relationship between the proposed property and Twin Cottage, with the aim to provide additional screening without unduly harming the usability of the garden.
Members, any more points of clarification? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr May made a point of making reference to the height difference between the proposed buildings and his own building. My question is, can you tell us anything about the height of neighbouring properties in Mill Lane / Mill Crescent? Would these houses at their height be out of place in your view?
Thank you, Councillor. In the report, the height difference between the proposed dwellings and twin cottage was assessed, and I have come to a conclusion that the height difference would not be harmful in terms of the impacts on the visual amenity, because all other surrounding properties are two-story and of similar height.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second question.
Would you move your mic a bit closer, please, Councillor Harvey?
Sure.
Thank you.
Second question. We had Councillor Keithley teased out the detail of the question of the floor areas and space and so on. And I think we're all, well, I'm sat here under the impression that what we're talking about is the difference between what we considered last time and what we are being asked to consider now is of the order of 1% difference. My question is, the illustrations that we've been presented with, the elevations and so on, I presume they are the same this time as last time, and that while there may be a 1% difference in measurements, visually what we're being presented with is the same. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor. So do you refer last time to the previous committee meeting or the previous application, if that makes sense?
Previous committee meeting.
Previous committee. So since the last committee meeting, there were no amendments to the scheme, so it was purely on the basis of incorrect advice provided to you during that meeting, that the floor space created by this development is smaller in comparison with the previous application. So you're looking at the same scheme as last time. We just clarified the fact that this development is slightly larger than the previous application.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And does anyone else have any other points of clarification? Councillor Keithley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll bring us on to page 15, please. Because as we look at this application, we're looking at 4 properties rather than the extant permission, which is for 3. So in the third paragraph, you say plot 3 would have an upper 4-bedroom window set back 9 metres from the side boundary, which is short of the guidelines of part F. Plot 4's got 2 upper floor windows, which we set back 9 and 6 from the boundary. I'm assuming that would also be short of the guidelines in part F. Would I be right in saying that? Could you show us on the plan, on the latest plan, which adds this additional property, where those windows are in respect of twin cottage, and can you show us the extant permission and compare the two? So what I'm really asking is, I've got 1, 2, 3 windows looking over twin cottage in this application we're considering tonight. I'd be interested to know how many windows overlook twin cottage in the extant permission.
So currently I'm showing the proposed site plan for 4 dwellings, and here you can see the boundary of the site with Twin Cottage, and Twin Cottage is here. And these 3 plots will have upper floor windows that would be facing the garden of Twin Cottage.
So that's the right hand. The 2 right-hand plots are 3 and 4. Is that right? Is that right?
Yes.
So plot 3 has 1 window looking over, and plot 4 has 2 windows looking over. Is that correct?
I will double check.
I think I'm reading the report. That's what's sort of suggested. It says plot 3 has 1, plot 4 has 2. And if it was possible, Chair, I'd be interested to know what the existing permission has by comparison.
If you just bear with us for a few moments, we're just trying to pull up the right schematics.
Sorry for the extended delay, Chair, and please excuse the nature of what I'll show you now. It's not prepared in a presentation. These are the approved plans from the previous scheme. What you're looking at here is plot 3. These would be the rearward facing elevations of plot 3 of the previously approved scheme. So we have 1, 2, 3 windows at first floor, solar panels. And then units 1 and 2. Again, plot 1, 1, 2, 3 windows at first floor. Plot 2, 1, 2, 3 windows at first floor. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you, David. It does help a little, but in my mind, I suppose that I'm thinking that introducing the extra house means that there's at least one other property overlooking Twin Cottage, which either is 3 properties, or 2, compared with 1 previously, or 2. So it's either 3 to 2 or 1 to 2. That was what's in my mind, really. I was just trying to get assess the degree of overlooking that of those windows and the separation distances, which is in the report, but it's the difference between this application and the current extent permission.
I think in that respect, the newly provided overlay plan, which was being shown before, which showed essentially the footprints of what was previously consented and what we're now considering at this committee with the dotted line, showed fairly usefully the building line at the rear elevation there, because potentially any of the windows in any of those dwellings could offer an element of overlooking and some separation distance issues there.
I get that. Thank you very much.
Any other points of clarification, members? No? Okay then, so on to the debate. Who'd like to start? A very tentative Councillor Parry.
Well, nobody else is coming forward, so I will. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the planning officers, because I think this opportunity has given us, together with the previous committee meeting, a lot of time to debate this particular development. I'm very mindful, looking at it, that if I was wanting to go against the officer's recommendation, I'd have to find some really strong material planning reasons for refusal. I take on board what the parish council have said. I also take on board what the owner of Twin Cottage has said, and I have an understanding from where they're coming from. But I think what we have in front of us is there is already a planning permission for 3 large dwellings. Yes, this makes it 4, but in the overall scheme, because it's 1% more in terms of floor space, I can't see a strong enough material planning reason to refuse this on the basis of the fallback position and what we have. So therefore, I would be going for recommendation for approval with the condition of the removal of permitted development rights, because I don't feel there is significant reason for any material planning reasons to refuse. Thank you, Chair.
Is that a proposal?
So that is a proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Who else would like to speak? Councillor Harvey.
I'll second that proposal.
Okay. Any other members wanting to speak this evening? Councillor Keithley.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I think I would agree with Councillor Parry in the sense that this has been a welcome opportunity to revisit this this application and to seek some further clarification, which has been, I think, very useful to me, because when I looked at the change from 3 to 4, I could see that there was a benefit in having another property for another family. Having said all that, I have some concerns about the impact on Twin Cottage and some issues that I was perhaps not so familiar with as I feel I am now. And those are that there are some potential planning reasons to consider the failure to meet the separation distances of the overlooking windows. You'll see that on page 15. The office has taken a view that because Twin Cottage have an area to sit in that is close to their property, which is in the guidelines, that they'll be less impacted by the overlooking. But what we've heard from the neighbour is that he in fact uses a sunny side of the wall to sit against rather than the back of his house. And the gardens that are provided in the properties are really quite shallow. and it's been suggested that greater tree planting is proposed in those very shallow gardens, which is on the side of the gardens that will cast a shadow onto the gardens. Because the sun, if I'm right, listening to the arguments, the sun is on this side and shining up. So they're sort of south-facing gardens. So the trees and the shallow gardens are going to cast a shade in the gardens, is what I'm saying. So I'm a bit concerned about that. There's a failure on the separation distance for the overlooking. And there's actually, although the size of the gardens for these properties meets the absolute minimum requirement, we've heard that they don't meet the recommendation in respect of the depth. And if you're going to introduce planting, which I know, I've heard that the planting is going to be conditioned to landscaping plan, but that really doesn't mean a huge amount to me, because what happens is what happens in the future. The landscaping plan might not always be what is there materially. So I've got some concerns about the neighbour impact, to be truthful. I do understand the proposal and the fact it's been seconded, because we've got 4 houses instead of 3 on what's ostensibly the same footprint, which is no bad thing. But I just think personally, I feel we need to weigh up the neighbour impact, which I think is potentially, with additional planting and the size of the gardens, is something that we should consider, because there seems to me to be a failure on a couple of the specifications.
Just to clarify, is that a proposal of any kind, or just
no? I'm putting that out there
Yep.
as something for members to consider when they're debating the merits of this application.
Thank you, Councillor Keithley. Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, something that I just want to bring, we're here for planning for the future. And yes, there is planning for 3 houses. However, this has jumped to 4. So when we look in the future and thinking that they've shoehorned 4 houses into this tight development with the extra cars, etc., and you're thinking, have we made the right choice if we accept it?
Okay, anybody else want to speak? Oh, they're all jumping at me now. Councillor Fleming.
I'm tending to follow on what Councillor Keithley's saying in terms of the compactness of these gardens, and we've got one of the biggest houses on this 4-way development with the smallest garden. And I don't particularly like that, because what that really does is it brings that house so close to the other cottage that the overlooking is a bit of a problem. I didn't like this before, and I don't like it now, but I don't have to like it. I have to see whether it meets with planning regs, and I see what Councillor Parry's saying about it doesn't cause any material planning problems. But I still don't like it, and I'm still tending to follow what Councillor Keithley's saying and what Councillor Storey's having to say at the moment. So at the moment, I don't think I'll be supporting the officer, but that is not a proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. Councillor Harvey.
2 things. I wanted to inquire from Councillor Scorer what his planning reason is for his point of view. And secondly, just to say it again, planning is not a popularity contest. It's a matter of weighing up a proposal against a set of policies, legislation, guidelines, practice, appeal decisions, etc. It's not a popularity contest.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Would you like to respond to that, Councillor
this is my subjective view, Councillor. If we're here at a planning, if it was in that case, and it's my interpretation, and we're in a debate at the moment, but if you're going to rubber stamp everything through and think, well, actually, it's going to go if it's going to go down to Bristol with and the inspectorate's going to rubber stamp everything, what's the point of being here? But I think obviously one thing is that for me it's overdevelopment of the site, which I think is a planning consideration.
It certainly is. Does anyone else like to speak? Councillor Keithley.
Well, I will come back in. I I put forward the idea that there were potentially a couple of planning reasons for deciding not to go with the officer's recommendation, and they are to do with the separation and the overlooking and the impact on the neighbour, the size of the gardens, this landscaping impact and the overlooking windows. But what I would say, when we consider this, you've got to remember there is an existing planning permission for this site with 3 houses. The footprint of the proposal that's under consideration now is very little different from what's already permitted. So for me, in my mind, it's, whilst I don't like the overlooking and I empathise with the neighbour and I don't like the small garden, I am minded to think about the permission that's already granted and the fact that this application is an extra house for a family, whereas what's in place now is 3 houses for 3 families. So that's in my mind. That's why I've not put forward an alternative proposal to that which Councillor Parry put forward.
Would anyone else like to speak? Sorry.
Sorry, Chairman, if I can. Shouldn't we be looking at this application rather than the previous application?
Through you, Chair. Thank you. Yes, you need to determine this application on its own merits. Members need to determine whether the application complies with policy or not, broadly speaking. The previous consent is a material consideration. I think that although it doesn't amount to a fallback which creates an impetus for you to approve this, because this is undoubtedly a different development of its own kind, the impacts of the other development are relevant material considerations which members are entitled to weigh up in their debate.
Thank you. Councillor Hencher-Serafin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's one I don't really like, and I do agree with Councillor Keithley. And I think we are in a difficult position. As Councillor Parry has said, I don't think we've got a leg to stand on if we actually refuse it, even though we don't like it. It's too small a garden for the big property, overlooking. But as they've got planning permission for basically the 3 houses, I don't think, I don't like it, but there we go. Okay.
Anybody else like to speak? Councillor Harding.
Thank you, Chair. Just being pragmatic about this. They could go ahead with the 3 large 4-bedroom. We've got loads of those in the district. What we're short of is starter homes, and this gives us 2 starter homes. And we're going to have to get used to smaller gardens because of the government targets we're going to have to build. We're going to have to get used to smaller gardens and more dense settlements. And why should this area be any different from Bishopton, for example? So I think just pragmatically, go with the greater choice for starter homes.
Thank you, Councillor Harding. Councillor Passingham.
I'd agree with Councillor Harding that the higher density in an urban area we've got to get used to, and the alternative is to build more houses on greenfield sites in unsuitable places. So, and I think any development in an urban area is going to impinge slightly on neighbours, and which is always going to be the case. So, anyway, I'm tending to vote with the.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, so I'll just add my thoughts to this just before we go to the vote. I didn't like this 2 weeks ago. I was very much sort of the opinion, but a little like Councillor Keithley in the respect that I wasn't entirely happy with it and some of its technicalities, but perhaps then in turn with Councillor Parry, I don't see anything really strong enough in terms of material planning considerations to actually go against this one. So I think I'm probably swayed by the debate in some respects, not least by Councillors Harding and Passingham's very pragmatic approach to probably alter my view slightly tonight. But that's just my opinion. So we have a proposal by Councillor Parry, seconded by Councillor Harvey. Can we take a vote for all those in favour of granting? Oh, 2 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. Just a word of clarification in respect of the slightly amended condition for removal of PD rights. I believe the condition as it's currently drafted prevents roof alterations. I'm taking it when members are asking for PD rights to be removed, they're talking about extensions and freestanding outbuildings in the rear garden. Happy if members are happy to agree that.
So then, members, the proposal is to grant the application as worded, but with some delegation to officers regarding the final wording on PD rights and the like. Can I see a vote for all those in favour, please? All those against? Okay, so committee resolves to grant application 2400408 FUL. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll adjourn for 2 minutes just for a quick comfort break, as that was quite a long debate. So we'll move on to our final application for the evening, which is, where is it? 220324 FUL, land off Tyso Road, Little Kyneton. Our presenting officer on this one is Alison Miller. Millers. Whenever you're ready, please take it away. Sorry.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this application is located in open countryside to the south of Little Kyneton, location as shown by the black dot. The application requests permission for the change of use of land from agricultural to equestrian, erection of stables, a barn building, a manege, together with associated external works to form a new equestrian facility, including an improved access. Additional livery space is required as an expansion to the existing mixed agricultural equestrian business in Ox Hill. This parcel of land is within an offlying parcel of agricultural land in the same ownership. The site is outside the built-up area boundary, but is not in the conservation area, and there are no listed buildings in the immediate vicinity. There are public rights of way nearby, but none very close. These are shown by dashed green lines. Here's a recent aerial view of the site, showing the application site outlined in red. It's approximately 0.4 hectares, excluding the linear access to the south. The broadly rectangular area where the development would be located is approximately 130 metres by 35 metres wide. The location of the equestrian facility is on agricultural land, currently arable, utilising an existing field access off Tyso Road, that's here, approximately 200 metres to the south of Little Kyneton. The site is adjacent to an existing, relatively new agricultural building, which is just there, if you can see that. And there is a dilapidated shed and overgrown concrete hardstanding at the northern end, that's up here. The development would include this area in line with AS10R. The perimeter of the wider field has well-maintained hedgerows and trees, and there is another field separating the development site from the road. So this field here intervenes between the development site, the hedgerow, and the road. So this is the proposed site plan. So the equestrian facility would be in commercial equestrian use as a training facility for local competition riders and for full livery. DIY livery where owners look after their own horses is not proposed. The stables would be occupied by a manager who would breed, train and ride multiple horses. The aim is to ensure a continuous throughput of quality horses, taking on sports horses from owners who do not have the skill or the facility to train and compete with their own horses. Full livery would also be offered to local equestrians who pay for their horses to be stabled and exercised, ready for riding themselves. The proposals specifically include 18 single-storey full livery stables, each measuring 3.6 by 3.6 metres, stores at the corner, fairly typical in design, approximately 3 metres to the ridge, made of stained timber boarding externally. There's a bedding and tack room here, approximately 5 metres to the ridge. A green roof and green wall cladding is proposed. There are 10 parking spaces for riders, grooms, stable assistants and horse owners. A manege, which is approximately 40 by 20 metres, with a 1.2 metre post and rail fence around it. It's surfaced with fibre-bound sand. There are 4 grazing paddocks, and there is a compost silo with 1.5 metre high blockwork walls with a concrete base. Manure will be stored temporarily and spread on agricultural land elsewhere in the holding, and a condition is recommended by the case officer requiring the submission and approval of a horse waste management plan. This plan shows gravel driveways and a car park, and areas in front of the stables and barn are to be surfaced in concrete. There are additional areas of planting, and the existing trees and hedgerows would be retained. So this hedgerow along the back of the site, which actually runs north-south, if the plan was orientated, is an existing hedgerow, which you'll see in the photos, which is to remain. The wider field extending to 3.6 hectares is to undergo arable reversion to permanent pasture, which will be grazed by horses and the holdings sheep. Hay will be taken from this agricultural land also. So this is the stable block, 18 stables in total. This is the bedding and tack room. The next few slides show a few contextual photographs. This is a view across the wider field taken from the southern corner. So the application site runs inside the hedgerow along this boundary, which is where the access road will be. If you can see, the white building there is the existing agricultural building, which is on the other side of the fence. So the site is generally level with mature hedgerows all around the wider site. It's generally flat, but rises in the eastern corner up here. So this is the existing field access that will be approved. And these are views taken from the proposed access in both directions along Kyneton Road. These pictures show the neighbouring agricultural building, and the development is proposed on the other side of the hedge behind the building, so at the back here, behind there. So that's the end of the presentation, but I do have a video which might if I can. Is that sharing? Oh, yeah, there you go, hang on. Yes. So, if I stop sharing, I'll still find it. Is that it? That must be it. So, yeah, I'm going to just try and make it. So, what I will do is try and slow it down a bit. Does it say play speed?
I think you might be able to right click on here.
Oh yeah, there it is. So slow. So, this is taken, I'll try and do it fairly slowly. So it's taken, starts off facing, I'm standing within the application site in the middle, alongside the hedgerow, facing the existing agricultural building. So that's approximately south-ish. So I'm going to pan round along the hedgerow in the opposite direction, if you bear with. So you can see the existing hedgerow, obviously, and the existing trees. So, and you can see as it widens out, you can see that the field is in arable use at the moment, and at the far end you can see that's a red road in the far distant, but you can see that it's fairly flat, rising in the far eastern corner, that's up here, and then heading back now to the south towards the hedgerow, and that's the line where the access road is going to come along past the existing agricultural building, if that makes sense. Okay, that's me.
Thank you, Alison. Okay. So we'll call forward our first speakers on this. Back to the table, Councillors David Gosling and Ken Priddis. Sorry. Make yourselves comfortable. Are you splitting your time this time or doing it? Okay. So would you like a 30-second warning before each 1.5 minutes? Not a problem. So, but on the right to turn the mic red, and whenever you're comfortable, take it away.
Good evening, Chairman. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. The application as it appears on the planning website, refers to the address as a Red Road, subject only to a single-page amendment redesignating it as the Tyso Road. A cover letter heading is also called Land Off Red Road. The transport statement for this application is also for access from Red Road. The design and access statement version 2 states the site is currently accessed from both the Tyso Road and the Red Road. Is it surprising that the Parish Council was concerned about these two applications, how they evolved? It is confusing. With this degree of confusion, the PC remains concerned about traffic and access. The officer's proposed condition is welcome, but we will wish to be engaged in the wording of that condition to ensure that we all know what is acceptable long after any consent might be given. Access for all vehicles must only be from, on and to the Tyso Road. The officer's reports also state the site is not classified as the best and most versatile agricultural land. Thank you. Whereas the planning statement says it's not possible to conclude whether the site comprises of best or agricultural land. It is important because if it was grade 3A, it would mean MPF rules said it cannot be developed. A further amendment says that soil samples would have to be taken. Why weren't they taken? Should they not be taken? The planning statement also views the sites are very limited in the field boundary from the Red Road formed by mature hedges. We therefore welcome the proposal by the officer to place a landscaping condition on any consent, but such proposal should not allow the applicant...
That's the minute and a half, just so you know.
How long, sorry?
A minute and a half.
Okay, thank you. We would therefore welcome the proposal by the office to place a landscape condition on any consent, but just proposal should not be allowed the applicant to let the existing hedge grow in an uncontrolled manner, which would destroy any open vistas. Screening around the immediate building would be the answer. The one major concern is reference to the interpretation of CSAS 10 in controlling developments outside the built-up area boundary. The key phrases are to avoid a level of increase in traffic on rural roads that would be harmful to the local area and accepted in principle, whether its site is readily accessible by means of transport other than car. This development is not for the benefit of Kyneton or its community or its economy. The few letters of support for this application have come from either Oxhill or Ettington. The villages are either 15 minutes walk, are neither 15 minutes walk or a trivial distance. Our objection to this policy remains fairly on the basis of non-compliance with District Planning Policy AS10. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were going to split the time, so
No,
I misheard. That's my fault. I do apologise.
I thought I was speaking quite...
So, sorry about that. Does anyone have any questions for the Parish Council? Councillor Keithley.
Yeah, thanks very much, gents. I've got a question about, you just stated that the development would have no benefit to Kyneton, the community. Yet, in listening to the case officer put forward the details of the proposal, as I remember right, there were 18 stables, competition horses, training. There's going to be quite a few jobs there, and young people are attracted to these sorts of jobs. I know my neighbour's got horses, so they do that. So, I mean, Kyneton's very close. Did you not consider the possibility that some of these jobs might be available to the younger people or any people in Kyneton? It's just down the road.
I also think that there's a reference to there just being one person employed on the site, and that's the manager in the officer's report. And what I thought I heard from Planning Officer Alison down there. And there are many other stables and things in the Kyneton area where the people are already employed doing that. We don't think that this is adding that much more, and there certainly aren't that many horse owners that live in Kyneton that haven't already got their horses stabled.
Okay,
I think the important bit for us is that it's the
access
I
to
think we
this?
might have answered the question,
Okay.
I think.
Thank you. Well, I can follow up with the applicant.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for our parish councillors? Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chair. The Oxall Road out of Little Kyneton looks quite a fast road. Has there been any accidents over there over the last couple of years?
Yes, there have been accidents. Certainly, there was an accident earlier this year, last year I think it was, where a car collided with a horse and the rider was severely injured. Okay, we do have a current application into Warwickshire County Council Highways to have the 30-mile-an-hour limit extended down that road with welcome gates. This is still outstanding with highways. But yes, it is a very fast road, to be quite honest with you, and this is what we want to make absolutely certain that the access egress onto this site is correct and is well defined in the planning application.
Thank you. Is it a point of clarification?
It is in addition to that, not only was the rider seriously injured, but the horse was put down.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else got any questions? Councillor Harding.
Thanks, Chair. I note that it's a 15-minute walk into Kyneton. I didn't see a footway along that road. Is that right?
There isn't a footway.
There isn't a footway.
I walk it regularly. It is quite dangerous, to be quite honest with you. The Red Road, which was referred to, is a more amenable walking route. And this is one of the other reasons why we want to make absolutely certain that there isn't an increase in traffic on that. But the Tyso Road in itself is dangerous. Yes, you're quite right.
And it's probably maybe 7 minutes cycle ride, but the width of the road there looks to me like a standard 6-metre rural road, which is not great for cyclists. Is that right?
You're absolutely right. We do get a lot of cyclists on that road as well as pedestrians. You're perfectly correct. And as I said, this is one of the reasons why we wanted highways to extend the speed limit, to be quite honest with you. It is dangerous.
Okay,
This is why we want the total clarification, as I say, on the planning application.
Anybody else? Any questions? Gentlemen, thank you so much for all your contributions this evening.
You're welcome.
Right, our final speaker for this evening is David Bishton, the agent. If you'd like to come forward, make yourself comfortable. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. You look like you already know the drill, so I shall let you go in your own time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman, councillors and officers. May I first of all thank you for allowing me to address you in support of this application for a new equestrian facility just outside Little Kyneton. I would like to state that as the agent for this application, my practice has taken into consideration all the comments and observations made by both the statutory consultees, ward member, parish council and third-party representatives, and have worked closely to ensure that their observations have been fully taken into account in the various amendments which we made to the scheme which has just been presented to you. If we take the agenda items in the same order, I would like to comment on each response as follows. First, ward member. The objection is based on policy CS15, which clearly is not relevant in this specific case, as it solely refers to residential development. The applicant also confirms that there is no intention to include any residential element on his site. It is also quite clear from the submitted location plan precisely where the improved access is positioned on the Tyso Road. Secondly, the parish council objection. As stated before, policy CS15 is not relevant. Policy AS10 only applies to the enlargement of an existing group of buildings for business use, and policy CS24 refers to tourism and related uses, and therefore none of these policies are relevant to this application. The parish council also continued to refer to the access being from Red Road, which was discounted at a very early stage many months ago. Third one, third-party representations. The majority of the objectors again refer to the now discounted Red Road access, and such comments are therefore irrelevant, with development outside the built-up area boundary also being irrelevant for a commercial equestrian establishment. It's also very much appreciated that the CPRE have given their support to the application, and as acknowledged experts in rural development planning matters, their opinion should be given significant weight. Fourth one, the statutory consultees. You will note from your agenda that there have been no objections from either Warwickshire County Council Highways, Severn Trent Water, SDC Environmental Health, WCC Ecology or WCC Fire and Rescue. In conclusion, we would also bring your attention to the obvious benefits which this equestrian facility would bring to the Kyneton area by not only providing employment and services for local people, especially those who wish to be close to their horses, but also significantly reducing their travelling, thus making this location much more sustainable. Finally, we would like to comment that the assistance of your case officer, Paul Thompson, has been very much appreciated throughout the long course of this submission, and he has clearly fully complied with paragraph 38 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which requires local authorities to proactively work with applicants, and I would therefore respectfully request that you follow his recommendation.
If I could ask you to wrap up now, thank you.
Planning permission for this much needed facility. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'd be only too pleased to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bishton. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Hencher-Serafin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening.
Good evening.
Have you any idea how many additional jobs this would create?
It's going to vary quite considerably, but I would imagine that with the amount of stables that are going to be maintained and what have you, there will be at least, I would imagine, 6 to 8 additional jobs in that area, at least.
So, will the horses be going on the road, or will they stay within the...
Well, quite amusingly, we were intending going onto Red Road because it is classed as a bridle way, as you can see from the agenda. And obviously, you know, we would have more horses probably going in and out of the site onto the bridleway than onto the Tyso Road. There would be a minimum amount of traffic involved going onto the main vehicular access now onto the Tyso Road.
And last item, would you apply for some signs of horses that would be travelling down the road? Would you apply for signs to be put up?
For warning signs?
Pardon?
Yeah.
Warning signs of horses?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else, any questions? Councillor Harding.
I'm interested in dung. From my organic gardening days, I understood that horses very often get wormed with very powerful worming agents, and therefore you shouldn't spread that on your garden for at least a year. Otherwise it kills all the worms in the soil. 18 stables, how much dung is that going to generate?
I would hate to...
Just the horses. How many horses? And do you have
hate
enough storage on site to store that for a year before it gets spread on the land?
As you can see from the site plan, we've got quite a large clamp. I would imagine that will probably take a good 2 or 3 months worth of horse manure. Some of it could be left to rot. The majority of it, I know it's no good on gardens, but on agricultural land, it's very good.
Councillor Keithley.
Thank you, Mr. Bishton. Thank you very much. 18 stables, is that right?
Yes.
Competition horses?
Some of them. Some of them, yes.
Worth a fortune, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. Who's going to actually look after them at the end of the day?
There will be closed-circuit TV looking after them.
That's all?
That's all that's needed, and that's all that's on all of the other equestrian establishments as well.
So there's nobody on site, just CCTV?
There is nobody on site permanently.
And the nearest...
They will be there from dawn till dusk.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Then thank you very much, Mr. Bishton, for your contribution.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, members, we'll move on now to points of clarification with our officer, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chairman. Question about the soil test and the type of, whether it's 3A or 3B. The question was posed, why weren't soil tests available prior to you being able to write your report? And secondly, what's the significance to this application had it been 3A or 3B?
So, the committee report refers to the application site being not best and most versatile agricultural land. However, you'll see on the update sheet there's a reference to the DEFRA agricultural land classification showing that the site to be undifferentiated grade 3 land. So grade 3 land is good to moderate, and best and most versatile agricultural land can be grades 1, 2 or 3A. So if the whole, pretty much all of the area is grade 3, but to hone down on whether that's 3A, 3B or 3C, you have to do soil analysis to find out the particular makeup of the soil, to find out which classification it goes into.
So I'm left feeling the question hasn't quite been answered. Should soil analysis have been undertaken? Is it critical to the decision? If not, why wasn't it done?
Officers, excuse me, officers took the view that it's not necessary in respect of this application. Policy AS10 of the core strategy does guide us to seek to avoid the loss of large areas of high quality agricultural land. We didn't consider that this was a large area, the majority of the land remaining in an agricultural use for the grazing of horses.
Sorry, can I just add to that? The site area is only 0.4 of a hectare, whereas the larger field is about 6.8 hectares, when that will remain unchanged. So it's a very small proportion of the field.
Thank you. Anybody else got any points of clarification? Councillor Keithley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Alison, just a bit of clarification on this issue of access and the safety issues. We've heard tonight that there's no objection from WCC Highways. In your report, it said after extensive safety audits and considerations, they wanted us to, or council to consider conditions in respect of the gates and you know, the access to this site. I'm a bit puzzled by the safety concerns and the two roads. Could you help us understand a little bit more, please, about where horses are going to come in and out or vehicles are going to come in and out, and what's going to happen if someone wants to ride their horse on this very dangerous road that's very, very fast, or alternative, ride it on this other road, which appears to be a lesser road, according to the applicant's agent, Bridleway.
Yeah, so for clarification, I haven't been the case officer for the application, so I've picked this up in Paul's absence, but I have looked at the highways chronology of the application, because I think the highways consultations have caused quite a lot of delay through the course of the application. When the application was originally submitted in 2022, it involved an access onto Red Road to the north. To be clear, this now does not form part of this application. That access onto Red Road, being much more narrow, was resulted in an objection from the Highways Authority, because the Red Road is not suitable for vehicles. Suitable for horses, but not suitable for vehicles. So the application was changed, the red line was changed, reconsultations went out with an amended red line boundary, and the proposals included a new access off Tyso Road with alternative visibility displays based in both directions of 215 metres due to the 60-mile-an-hour speed limit. So at that point, vehicle tracking was provided, and also a road safety audit was also submitted to the Highways Authority for their consideration. So the road safety audit identified that the north visibility display was not clear. So then a speed survey was done, and it showed that 85% of the speeds were below the 60-mile-per-hour speed limit. So the data, the evidence that was considered was 48 miles per hour from a northbound direction and 49.6 from a southbound which then generated the need for reduced visibility displays of 140 and 144 respectively. So new visibility displays drawings were submitted, new swept path analysis drawings were submitted, which then were considered by Highways and the road safety team, and they withdrew their objection and recommended a couple of conditions, including resurfacing of the first 5 metres of the new access on Tyso Road, and they recommended that the gates be set back by 5 metres from the edge of the carriageway to allow vehicles to pull in off the highway.
Right, well thank you Alison, that's very helpful. Interesting to know that the sort of speed data was what determined the final approach to the visibility displays that would be acceptable. Do you know whether or not the centre, this facility can get access to the Red Road
Well, I think it's
without getting onto the Tyso Road?
I think Paul has recommended a condition for there to be no vehicular access onto Red Road from the application site, but there is nothing to stop, because the site, it's all within the same land ownership.
Right.
There would be nothing to stop
horses going
walking
out,
along
right?
And accessing onto.
Okay, so that
Red
gives
Road.
horses an option not to go out onto Tyso Road and to go straight out onto this much smaller Red Road.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
So the application site does also include 4 exercise paddocks, and then the horses themselves will be turned out onto the wider field when it's downgraded from arable use.
Thank you for that. Councillor Harding, just.
Sorry, me again. Again, on safety, looking at the jobs that might be generated by this and what sort of jobs they are, the ages of the people who are likely to take them and where they're going to come from, it seems to me that the temptation would be to cycle from the village out to this site on an entirely unsuitable road. So it's all very well looking at accesses for safety and visibility.
Have you got
displays.
a question? Okay.
But yes, would the applicant be prepared to make a contribution to creating a cycleway or a footway along there to improve safety?
Officers don't consider that is necessary. Officers have made a recommendation on the application as it has been submitted, and that's what is before members tonight.
Councillor Scorer, then Councillor Passingham.
Thank you. With the menage, I'm looking, is there any exterior lights? Because obviously in the winter, they'll be wanting to exercise their horses and do dressage, because obviously it's a competitive yard. Are there any external floodlights on the menage?
Some in the documentation in the planning submission, there is low-level lighting between the stables is referred to, but there's no details submitted. So Paul has requested a lighting condition, but obviously the planning statement doesn't say no floodlighting is proposed. It only mentions low-level flood lighting, but a detailed lighting condition has been recommended.
Just round the yard, not on the menage, or would they include that on the menage? Low level.
No floodlighting is requested. If somebody wanted to put in floodlighting, they'd have to come in with a separate planning application for that.
Councillor Passingham.
Yeah, I'm interested in the horse waste management plan. There's been a lot of publicity lately about agricultural runoff polluting rivers and streams. Would the waste management plan have conditions that would be able to restrict the runoff, or what sort of things are in it that would protect the wider environment?
Environmental health were consulted on the application, as you'd expect, and they have requested the inclusion of the waste management plan, and the details will be worked out with environmental health because that's their specialism.
Oh, right.
I don't have it in front of me, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any further points of clarification? No? Okay then, so let's move on to the debate. Who'd like to start? Okay. We'll let Councillor Harvey go first
I'm
this
quite
time.
happy to defer. Okay. I propose that we accept the application and grant. I propose that it should be granted. My reasons for saying that are visually from the Tyso Road, you won't be able to see this. I've been on the site. I've parked in the driveway. I've seen it on the ground. Once this is up and running, you won't see it from the Tyso Road at all. It provides, it's consistent with the provision of livery stables in South Warwickshire. It's not unusual. Somebody must have worked out a business plan to ensure that this is a viable proposition. It's consistent with the rural nature of the area. It will provide jobs. My amateur eye looking at the access onto the Tyso Road, provided the verges are kept trimmed, the lines of sight are very good. There's no such thing as a fast road. There are drivers who use cars at excessive speed. That's not the horse's fault. It's the responsibility lies with the driver. Cars don't do it on their own. There could be signs. I can't see why there should be a need for horses to be ridden up and down Tyso Road in any case. I can see perfectly well there must be access. I presume horses will be transported in and out in horse boxes. And my experience of drivers with horse boxes is that they go very, very slowly. So I don't see that as a particularly high risk. I can't see any material planning reason which would go against this. This is an addition to the local economy. It's consistent with the nature of the area. It's been thought through. That I don't think that the concerns about traffic and safety and so on have been ignored at all. They've been considered very thoroughly. So I don't see a material reason why we shouldn't approve this. So I'm quite happy to propose that we should.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think Councillor Harvey's stolen my thunder there. First of all, I would like to say Warwickshire is a centre of excellence for equestrianism. There are more high-profile riders keeping their horses in Warwickshire. We have the British Horse Society based at Stoneleigh, and therefore I'm very much in support of this in response to economic development, which actually is CS22, which I didn't see mentioned in the committee report, and it also conforms to AS10. So purely on the basis of those principles, plus there is very little line of sight, the development is not going to cause any harm to any neighbouring facilities. Yes, it is in the open countryside, but it is an agricultural equestrian business, and we should, in this current state, be welcoming those businesses wanting to invest in a rural economy such as equestrianism and really reinforce Warwickshire as a centre of excellence for this particular field of experience. Plus, I know very well there are a number of other equestrian facilities just on the outskirts of Kyneton, and I think it will complement the number of jobs locally. So fully support in conjunction and endorse what Councillor Harvey has already said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Councillor Keithley.
Okay, mine's fairly quick. Yeah, I support Councillor Harvey and Councillor Parry. I like to see this diversification in rural areas. I think the creation of jobs for young people, which is what tend to be attracted to this, is a really good thing. I wanted just to add one thing that perhaps hadn't been covered, If I understand right, that there is an access into the site from Red Road anyway, and if you look at the plan, you can see that where the horses are going to be based, it's going to be much quicker for anybody working there that wants to go there by bicycle to go the back way and go down Red Road and across the field than it is to cycle down what would be the Tyso Road, in my view. I'm minded to support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Keithley. Councillor Fleming.
Well, some of the questions I find quite amusing to listen to. I'm an owner of 5 horses, 3 competition horses, 1 retired competition horse and a competition pony. For Councillor Passingham, they produce a wheelbarrow full of muck every day. Just so you know. Runoff, it's not a big problem with horses, because for 6 months of the year they're out full time anyway. 6 months they're indoors. It tends to be very dry. Only when you've got very heavy rain you've got a potential runoff, and it's not very much at all. I'd definitely support this application. My only concern is that if you're paying £1,000 a month full livery for a competition horse and nobody on site, I'd be worried about that, because the horses are going to be 20k horses minimum anyway. So from that point of view, we livery on a yard similar to what's going on here, and we know what it's like. So from that perspective, I would support the application. And like Anne says, we're a good county for this job, so we should keep any facilities that we can get. So yeah, I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. So we have a proposal from Councillor Harvey, but nobody has seconded it yet officially. It's been supported around. Given Councillor Parry was first to speak or next to speak, would you like to second?
Great pleasure to second.
Thank you, Councillor. Did I see an arm wave to my right? Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, so we have both a proposer and a seconder to grant application 22032544 in line with officers' recommendations. Can I see a show of hands of all of those in favour, please? Thank you very much. So, committee resolves to grant application 22032544 FUL in line with officers' recommendations. So that was our last application for the evening. That brings us on to any urgent business. There's no urgent business. So thank you all very much, members of the public, members and our excellent officers. I will close the meeting. Thank you. Good night.